Hi, I'm Rob. Today we're going to be going over ESG investing. This video is part of my Stock Market Basics playlist, which currently has 4 other videos. So firstly, what is ESG? So the E stands for environmental, S for social, and G for governance. Companies are rated on their ESG fundamentals, and here is how each section is broken down. So the environmental section considers things like the company's impact on climate change, their ecological footprint, resource use, and pollution they are responsible for. So, for example, oil and gas companies will generally score low on their environmental aspects of ESG. Social then covers labour standards of its employees, community impact, customer responsibility, and health and safety of both employees and customers. Lastly is governance, which includes things like corruption and tax transparency. If a company funnels all its profits through a tax haven, then it will get a bad score here. The rights of shareholders are also considered to impact the governance rating. So what are some examples of bad ESG companies? Well, as mentioned, oil and gas companies would score badly for the environment aspect. So how does ExxonMobil score? All of the data is from MSCI, which has a really useful tool to check up companies' ESG scores. MSCI estimates companies' future carbon emissions and their contribution to global warming, with obviously oil and gas companies having massive emissions and how their emissions are expected to increase over the next 30 years. Exxon has been given a score of BBB, which is pretty average for its industry. Here we can see, of course, Exxon is poorly rated for biodiversity and land use, along with being rated average in some other aspects. Over the past 5 years, their ESG rating hasn't changed. Altria is one of the world's largest producers of tobacco. Altria scores quite well for its impact on climate. It's got a score of BBB for overall ESG, with of course negatives in product safety, quality, as well as chemical safety. Altria is considered an ESG leader for supply chain labour standards, which has helped its score increase from BB, which it's been at for the previous 4 years. Last example of bad ESG companies is Pfizer. Again, another company that is doing well in terms of emissions. However, their emissions are expected to grow over the next 30 years, but still below their annual carbon budget for the size of the company. Pfizer actually has the lowest score of my 3 examples, with a score of B, scoring very badly when compared with other pharmaceutical companies. They are behind in corporate behaviour and product safety and quality, but are leading in access to healthcare, meaning they help developing countries access their medicines with fair pricing and donations. Pfizer has remained B for the past 5 years. Now on to good ESG companies. GlaxoSmithKline, another pharma company. GSK has a very good emissions trajectory. Being already under their budget, they are continuing to decrease their emissions till reaching net zero in 2050. With the second highest rating of AA, GSK is considered a leader in ESG within the pharmaceutical industry. Like Pfizer, they are behind in terms of product safety, but are leading in corporate governance and emissions, along with providing access to healthcare. GSK has been increasing their ESG rating over the past 5 years. Last company I will be covering is Microsoft. They're doing well for emissions, keeping below their budget despite an expected increase. Microsoft have the top rating of AAA, with only 3% of companies in their industry having this rating. They are leading in 4 different sectors and only lagging in corporate behaviour. Microsoft have kept hold of the AAA rating for the past 5 years. Along with investing in particular ESG companies, you can also choose to invest in ESG ETFs. These index funds choose to exclude certain companies such as weapons and tobacco manufacturers. Many index fund providers offer ESG alternatives. Vanguard and iShares by BlackRock are a good option for ESG funds. Here are examples of a total stock market ESG ETF, V3AB. It was only incepted in March 2021, so it's hard to determine past performance. It's up 16.9% in 9 months, which is lagging the S&P 500's increase of 23%. It holds 5,800 stocks and has a fee of 0.24% a year, which is over 3 times higher than another Vanguard S&P 500 fund, VUSA, of 0.07%. So is there a need to consider ESG when investing? Major institutional investors expect companies to take a proactive approach to ESG, meaning the people who control the majority of the money in the stock market can potentially choose to exclude a company based on their ESG score, which would result in poor stock performance as less money is put into the stock. Next isn't return based, but some people choose not to invest in certain companies. For example, I will never invest in oil companies, even if I think they are massively undervalued. I just personally don't like the idea. I choose to invest in more eco-friendly companies like Greencoat UK Wind and the Renewable Infrastructure Group. Both companies I've made stock analysis videos on in the past, so check them out if you're interested. Lastly is how ESG practices can actually be beneficial for companies. For example, PepsiCo's sustainability program resulted in more than $375 million in cost savings from reduction in water consumption and waste. Despite some companies doing better than others for adopting ESG principles into their businesses, I don't think ESG should be seen as something that will cause a company or ETF to outperform non-ESG companies or ETFs. I personally think it's just something that should be considered when investing in companies. So I currently own V3AB in my stocks and shares ISA. I've been slowly increasing how much I own over the past few months, as I'm hoping to make this around 10% of my account, as I recently sold a large holding in an all-world ETF as I needed the cash. In my SIP and LISA, I own 3 ESG funds, an all-world, a UK and emerging markets. In my SIP, which is a retirement account, I exclusively own ESG funds split between these 3. The downside is, of course, that they charge higher fees than non-ESG funds. Thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe if you found the video helpful. Why not check out one of my stock analysis videos as well?